The pregnancy test lay on my bathroom counter like a loaded gun. Two pink lines stared back at me, and all I could think about was the conversation I'd had with my boss just 3 hours earlier about the upcoming merger. The same boss who had whispered sweet promises in my ear last month during our weekend in Chicago. The same boss who had just announced to the entire marketing department that anyone who couldn't commit 100% to the company's future had no place at Hartwell and Associates. My name is Diana Cross, and I'm about to turn 32 next month. I've been the senior marketing director at Hartwell and Associates for 4 years, climbing my way up from a junior position through sheer determination and 60-hour work weeks. The company specializes in corporate restructuring, and we've been riding high on a wave of successful acquisitions throughout the pandemic. I thought I had everything figured out until those two pink lines changed everything. The irony wasn't lost on me that I worked for a company that specialized in tearing other companies apart and rebuilding them. Little did I know that my own life was about to undergo the same brutal process. I met Marcus Hartwell when I was 27, fresh out of my MBA program and hungry for success. He was the golden boy of the corporate world, inheriting his father's company and expanding it into a multi-million-dollar empire. At 38, he was everything I thought I wanted in a mentor, and eventually, a lover. Tall, confident, with steel gray eyes that seemed to see right through you. Marcus had a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the room. Our relationship started professionally. He noticed my work on the Peterson Industries acquisition and personally commended me in front of the entire board. That night, he asked me to stay late to discuss strategy. One thing led to another. And before I knew it, we were sharing hotel rooms during business trips and stealing moments in his corner office after hours. For 2 years, we maintained the perfect balance of professional respect and personal intimacy. He promoted me twice, and I never once questioned whether I'd earned it. My work spoke for itself. The campaigns I developed brought in over $15 million in new business. I was untouchable, or so I thought. The first crack in our perfect facade appeared 3 months ago when Marcus hired his nephew, Bradley Hartwell, as the new director of business development. Bradley was everything Marcus wasn't: entitled, lazy, and convinced that his last name was his greatest qualification. During our first department meeting, Bradley made it clear that he considered my position temporary. "Uncle Marcus says the company needs fresh blood," Bradley announced, not bothering to look up from his phone. "Some of the old guard might need to step aside for the next generation." I exchanged glances with my colleagues, all of whom had been with the company for years. The message was clear: anyone who threatened Bradley's ascension would be eliminated. Marcus assured me privately that Bradley's comments meant nothing. "He's young and stupid," he said, pulling me close in his office. "You're my most valuable asset, Diana. Nothing will change that." I believed him, even when Bradley started undermining my projects and taking credit for my ideas. I trusted that Marcus would protect me, even when I noticed Marcus pulling away emotionally. Becoming distant during our private moments, I convinced myself it was just stress from the merger. The merger. Hartwell and Associates was acquiring Pinnacle Strategic Solutions, a smaller firm that would nearly double our size. It was the biggest deal in the company's history, and Marcus was under enormous pressure to make it work. The integration required careful planning, and Marcus had been working 18-hour days for weeks. 2 months ago, during a particularly stressful period, Marcus and I took a weekend trip to Chicago. It was supposed to be a working retreat, but the hotel suite, the champagne, and the relief of being away from the office created the perfect storm. We made love like we hadn't in months, desperate and passionate, as if we were trying to recapture something that was already slipping away. I should have been more careful. We both should have been more careful. But in that moment, surrounded by Egyptian cotton sheets and the glow of the city lights, consequences seemed impossible. When I missed my period 3 weeks later, I told myself it was stress. When I missed it again, I couldn't ignore reality anymore. The pregnancy test confirmed what I already knew in my heart. I was carrying Marcus Hartwell's baby. The timing couldn't have been worse. The merger was scheduled to close in 6 weeks, and Marcus had been making subtle comments about the need for total dedication from his senior staff. He'd already let go of 2 junior employees who he claimed weren't merger material. The writing was on the wall for anyone who couldn't prove their absolute loyalty to the company. I decided to wait until after the merger to tell him. It was a calculated risk, but I needed to secure my position first. If I could prove my value during the integration, Marcus would have no choice but to support me through the pregnancy and beyond. My plan might have worked if it weren't for Bradley. 3 weeks after I confirmed the pregnancy, Bradley started his campaign against me in earnest. He began questioning my decisions in front of clients, suggesting that I was losing my edge and not as sharp as she used to be. He scheduled competing meetings during my presentations and somehow always managed to be in Marcus's ear when I wasn't around. The final blow came during a board meeting, where I was presenting the post-merger marketing strategy. I'd worked for 3 weeks on a comprehensive plan that would position the combined company as the industry leader. Halfway through my presentation, Bradley stood up. "I hate to interrupt," he said, though his smirk suggested otherwise. "But I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Diana's been seeming a little unfocused lately. Are you feeling all right?" All eyes turned to me. I felt my face flush. And suddenly I was acutely aware of every pair of eyes in the room. Had they noticed the morning sickness I'd been fighting? The way I'd been leaving meetings early? The loose-fitting clothes I'd started wearing? "I'm fine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. As I was saying, the integration will allow us to cross-sell services and expand our client base by 40%. But the damage was done. I could see the doubt in their faces, the whispered conversations that would follow. Bradley had planted the seed perfectly. After the meeting, Marcus called me into his office. For a moment, I thought he was going to defend me, to reassure me that Bradley's comments were out of line. Instead, he closed the door and turned to face me with an expression I'd never seen before. "Diana, we need to talk about your performance." The words hit me like a physical blow. My performance? Marcus, you know my work better than anyone. I've exceeded every target, brought in more revenue than any other director in the company's history. "That was before," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Lately, you've seemed distracted, unfocused. The board has noticed." "The board, or Bradley?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Marcus's jaw tightened. "This isn't about Bradley. This is about what's best for the company. With the merger, we need everyone operating at peak performance. I can't afford to have any weak links." "Weak links?" I stood up, my hands shaking with anger. "Marcus, I am not a weak link. I am the strongest player you have, and you know it." "Are you?" He finally looked at me, and I saw something cold in his eyes that I'd never seen before. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're already checked out. Half the time you're running to the bathroom, the other half you're zoning out in meetings. If you're not happy here, maybe it's time to consider other options." Other options. The corporate euphemism for "you're fired" delivered with surgical precision. I felt the room spinning as the implications hit me. He wasn't just ending my career, he was ending us. Everything we'd built together, personally and professionally, was crumbling in real time. "I see," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "And I suppose you have someone in mind to take over my responsibilities?" "Bradley has expressed interest in expanding his role," Marcus said, as if he were discussing the weather. "He's young, hungry, and completely committed to the company's future." The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that I actually laughed. Young and hungry. Yes, I can see how that would be appealing. Marcus frowned. "Diana, you're being emotional. This is business." "Business." I repeated the word like it was poison. "Of course it is. It's always business with you, isn't it?" "Marcus?" I wanted to tell him about the baby right then. I wanted to watch his face crumble when he realized what he was doing. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the cold calculation that had gotten me this far in my career. I realized that if I played this card now, it would look like desperation, like I was trying to manipulate him into keeping me. Instead, I stood up and smoothed my skirt. I assume you'll want a transition plan for my projects? 2 weeks, he said, relief evident in his voice. Bradley will shadow you to ensure continuity. Of course he will. I walked to the door, then turned back. Marcus, when you realize what you've done, when you see how badly Bradley destroys everything I built, remember this moment. Remember that you chose him over me. I left his office with my head held high. But inside I was screaming. 4 years of my life. 4 years of 60-hour weeks, of missed holidays and lost relationships, of building something beautiful and successful. And he was throwing it all away for his incompetent nephew. That night, I went home to my empty apartment and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to fight back. The next morning, I started my research. I'd spent 4 years at Hartwell & Associates, 4 years with access to confidential information, financial records, and internal communications. I knew where the bodies were buried, and I knew exactly how to dig them up. Marcus liked to present himself as the golden boy of corporate America, but I knew the truth. I knew about the bribes to city officials that secured the Patterson Industries deal. I knew about the illegal stock options he'd given himself before the company went public. I knew about the campaign contributions that violated federal election laws. More importantly, I knew about the other women. I wasn't the first employee Marcus had seduced. Before me, there was Jennifer Martinez, a brilliant financial analyst who left the company suddenly after Marcus tired of her. There was Kelly Thompson, a promising junior associate who was mysteriously transferred to the Portland office after she started asking for a more serious relationship. There was Amanda Foster, whose sexual harassment complaint had been quietly settled with a non-disclosure agreement and a hefty payout. Marcus had a pattern, and I was just the latest victim. But unlike the others, I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I started by documenting everything, every inappropriate email, every late-night meeting, every business trip where we'd shared a room. I had 4 years of evidence sitting in my company laptop, and I spent my last 2 weeks systematically copying it all to a secure external drive. Bradley, meanwhile, was making a mess of everything I'd built. He canceled 3 major campaigns without understanding their strategic importance. He insulted 2 key clients during presentation meetings. He restructured my entire team, promoting his fraternity buddy from college to replace me and demoting my most experienced staff members. Watching him destroy my work was painful, but it was also perfect. Every mistake he made was another nail in Marcus's coffin. By the time I walked out of Hartwell & Associates for the last time, Bradley had already cost the company over $2 million in lost contracts. My last day was a Friday. Marcus didn't even bother to say goodbye. He sent Bradley to collect my badge and laptop, as if I were some kind of security risk. The irony was delicious, considering the true security risk was the man sitting in the corner office. I spent the weekend preparing my counterattack. I'd already contacted a lawyer, Emma Rodriguez, who specialized in employment discrimination and sexual harassment cases. She'd reviewed my evidence and confirmed what I already knew. I had Marcus dead to rights. But I didn't want just a settlement. I wanted revenge. The first shot across the bow came on Monday morning. I'd scheduled a meeting with Marcus's biggest client, Peterson Industries, under the pretense of discussing the transition of their account to Bradley. Instead, I walked into their conference room with a different agenda entirely. "Gentlemen," I said, setting down a folder full of documents, "I think you should know what kind of man you're really doing business with." I told them everything about the bribes, the illegal stock options, the pattern of sexual harassment. I showed them the evidence, the emails, the financial records. By the end of the meeting, Peterson Industries had canceled their contract with Hartwell & Associates. 1 down, 12 to go. Over the next month, I systematically destroyed Marcus's client base. I met with every major account, armed with evidence of his illegal activities and unprofessional behavior. Some clients were horrified and immediately terminated their contracts. Others were more pragmatic, using the information to negotiate better terms with competitors. The beauty of my strategy was its precision. I wasn't just burning bridges. I was dismantling the entire foundation of Marcus's empire. Every client who walked away took millions of dollars in annual revenue with them. Every contract that was canceled created a ripple effect throughout the company. Marcus, meanwhile, was scrambling to understand what was happening. He suspected sabotage, but he couldn't prove it. He hired a private investigator to look into his former employees, but I was too careful to leave any direct evidence. The coup de grace came when I contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'd been saving the stock options scandal for last. Marcus had illegally granted himself options worth over $3 million just before the company went public. It was securities fraud, pure and simple. And the SEC was very interested in my evidence. The investigation began quietly, but word spread quickly through the corporate world. Hartwell and Associates' stock price plummeted as investors lost confidence. The merger with Pinnacle Strategic Solutions fell through when they discovered the extent of the legal problems. Within 3 months, Marcus had lost everything: his clients, his reputation, his fortune. The company that had been his father's legacy was facing bankruptcy. Bradley, predictably, was the first to abandon ship, taking a job with a competitor and leaving Marcus to face the consequences alone. I watched it all unfold from my new office across town. I'd started my own consulting firm, Cross Strategic Solutions, and several of Marcus's former clients had followed me. The irony was perfect. I was building my empire on the ruins of his. But my revenge wasn't complete yet. I was still carrying his child, and he still didn't know. I'd been wrestling with what to do about the pregnancy for months. Part of me wanted to terminate it, to erase the last connection between Marcus and me, but another part of me saw it as the ultimate victory. His child would carry my name, not his. His child would be raised by me, without any knowledge of the man who had betrayed us both. I made the decision to keep the baby on a cold Tuesday in November. I was sitting in my new office, watching the news coverage of Marcus's arraignment on securities fraud charges. When I felt the first flutter of movement, it was barely perceptible. But it was real. My baby was real. That night, I wrote Marcus a letter. I didn't mail it immediately. I waited until after his sentencing. He got 5 years in federal prison, 5 years for securities fraud, with additional charges for bribery and campaign finance violations. The judge was particularly harsh, noting that Marcus had betrayed the trust of his employees, his clients, and the investing public. I mailed the letter the day after his sentencing. Marcus, I wrote, I thought you should know that you're going to be a father. The baby you'll never meet is due in March. She'll grow up knowing that her father was a criminal who chose money over loyalty, power over love. She'll know that he fired her mother for being pregnant, not knowing that the pregnancy he despised was his own creation. I've named her Hope, because that's what she represents to me. Hope for a better future, hope for justice, hope for a world where men like you can't destroy women like me without consequences. You fired me for being pregnant. The baby was yours. I hope that knowledge haunts you every single day for the rest of your miserable life. I never sent the letter. In the end, I realized that my silence was more powerful than any words could be. Marcus would spend the next 5 years wondering what had happened to his empire, never knowing that his own child was the catalyst for his destruction. Hope was born on a sunny March morning, healthy and perfect. She had Marcus's gray eyes but my stubborn chin. As I held her in my arms, I felt the last of my anger drain away. I had won, not just against Marcus, but against a system that tried to silence me. Cross Strategic Solutions flourished. Within 2 years, I had 50 employees and offices in 3 cities. I made sure that every single one of my female employees had comprehensive maternity leave and childcare benefits. I created mentorship programs for young women entering the corporate world. I built the company that Hartwell and Associates should have been. Marcus was released from prison last year. I heard through the grapevine that he tried to start a new consulting firm, but no one would work with him. His reputation was destroyed, his fortune gone. He was working as a night security guard at a warehouse in Queens, a fallen king surveying his empty kingdom. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a quiet sense of justice. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. The difference was that my choices were motivated by love for my daughter and respect for myself, while his were motivated by fear and greed. Hope is 4 years old now, brilliant and fearless. She doesn't know her father's name, and she doesn't need to. She has everything she needs: a mother who loves her, a successful business that will be her inheritance, and a world full of possibilities. Sometimes, when I'm reading her bedtime stories, I think about the woman I used to be, the woman who believed that love and loyalty were enough, who thought that working hard and being good would protect her from betrayal. That woman was naive, but she wasn't wrong. Love and loyalty are enough, but they have to be directed toward the right people. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it well. And now, every time I look at my daughter, I remember that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation. I didn't just destroy Marcus Hartwell's empire, I built something better in its place. He fired me for being pregnant, the baby was his. And now, that baby is the CEO of a company that's worth 10 times what his ever was. Some might call it revenge, I call it justice. The pregnancy test that started it all sits in my jewelry box now. A reminder of the moment my real life began. Not the life I planned, but the life I deserved. 2 pink lines that changed everything, that transformed betrayal into triumph, that turned the worst day of my life into the beginning of the best. Marcus Hartwell thought he could discard me like yesterday's newspaper. He thought he could erase 4 years of my life with a 2-week notice and a corporate euphemism. He thought he could choose his worthless nephew over the woman who had given him everything. He was wrong about all of it. I am Diana Cross, mother, CEO, and living proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to disappear. I didn't just survive his betrayal, I thrived because of it. And every day, as I watch my daughter grow stronger and smarter and more determined than any man who ever tried to diminish her, I know that I won. The baby was his, but the victory is mine.